Oh, you're talking about his first name.
Yeah, Marilainen.
Yeah.
But it's
also Bishel.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
According to the same.
We're here
guy.
for the first time in 2025, and we've got everybody, the whole gang, the A-team, the varsity. Sean Shapiro, Sam Nessler, Craig Ludwig. I'm Owen Newkirk. Producer John, the man Anderson. We are all here getting you ready for Stars Senators to ring in 2025. Let's get it started right now.
Get ready, boys.
Yes, yes, yes. This is the Dallas Stars DLLS pregame show. Sean, Sam, Craig, Owen, John, we're all here getting ready for a new debut. And interestingly enough, it's the fourth guy to make his NHL debut for the Stars this year, along with, of course, Justin Ritzkovian, Leon Bischel, and Oscar Beck. More news about him in a minute. But we have a quick hit with Sam, and then we're really going to dive into some details with Sean and Luds after Sam bows out. So we'll start with you, Sam. Arttu Hyry recalled this morning from the AHL, and he is going to make his debut tonight. He's been fantastic recently for the Texas Stars and carries a 10-game point streak into the next time he plays in the AHL, if he ever does.
Yeah, if you watched our shows back in preseason, you definitely heard his name. And if you've watched any Texas Stars games this year, you've heard his name as well. Hyry's been fantastic down there. He's been centering a line that's been really good with Blumel, who has also been really good. He's probably been the best player outside of Antonio Stranges down there, who was scoring at will as well. Scored his first North American hat trick back a few days ago. It's just been fantastic, and I think we all knew this was a guy who was on the short list to start after camp. And he's just impressed since then. I mean, a 10-game point streak. He's scoring a ton of goals. Like I said, he recorded a hat trick recently. He plays a game similar to, the guys that have been called up recently, the Ritzkovians, Oscar Beck, that can play a 200-foot game, play responsibly in both ends, but also he's a right-handed shot that can score some goals. And that's kind of what the Stars really need right now. So I think they're looking for him to come up and play a role, but also they need some scoring help right now. So he's maybe more of an option to score some goals than some previous call-ups, and they're hoping he can probably do that.
Why wasn't he called up before Ritzkovian then? Just curious if you guys have any thought.
I think it's the role. I think like we mentioned, Ritzkovian is a really, really sound player in all zones, and not that Hyry was not. I just mentioned he's a 200-foot player, but I think that they were looking for someone to come up and fill a role, thinking that they had their top six, what they did last game, and I don't think this changes the top six as well. But I think after Ritzkovian came up, he didn't do anything wrong, but he didn't show up a ton. He wasn't, flashy. He only got 550 in his game. And then played a little bit more in the last game before sitting out the entire third period. So for them, I think they look at a guy now who is more responsible than maybe Blumel or Stranges, who are scoring a lot down there right now, and he's also scoring. So they kind of see him as a perfect fit, where he's not going to come in and be a risk. He's not going to be a liability, but he also can put the puck in the net. I think this is the time that they decided that they need someone who can maybe score a little bit more, and he seems to be the guy to do it.
So Sam,
I also have a theory.
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
I have just a quick theory on the Ritzkovian versus Hyry, who got the first call. I think sometimes the call goes to the younger kid, Luds. Sometimes the cases are Ritzkovian, there's a little bit more time, a little bit more space in the development path, and you give him an opportunity. He was the more unknown coming in, and so I think a bit of the tie goes there on that place. So I think that's a little bit of both. So I think there's a lot of what Sam said, but part of an organization is you're trying to give Ritzkovian more and more to work towards, and he's continued to prove things right. So that's one of the reasons that he also got the first shot, I think.
And I wonder, too, if he had a little bit better of a production offensive start than Hyry did, because Hyry has come on and been lights out the last 12 games.
Wasn't he the player of the month? also?
Ritskovian was.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I was.
Yeah.
That's why I was
think
kind
he
of
was
curious
the
if that
player.
was throwing him a little bone.
I think so.
Okay.
And give him
Yeah.
a chance to see. And I think Ritskovian had a better start and was leading the team in scoring. And so you go, oh, okay, well, he's the guy.
Yeah.
But lately, Huru's been the guy.
Well, that's why when I hear Sam talk about R2D2 here, I'm like, why didn't we bring him up right away?
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Well, Ritskovian got a shot, and again, as Sam said, it wasn't bad. It was fine. The first game he got probably hindered because of all the special teams in Chicago, but that wasn't an excuse in the game on Tuesday night because there was one power play combined between Dallas and Buffalo, and it was more just a game in which Dallas had to win, and they shortened their bench and went with the guys that were going to put up the points, and that's fine. But I'm with you guys. I'm pretty excited to see, and due respect to Ritskovian, I think he'll have another shot, but I'm excited to see what Huru can do. Okay.
Yeah.
So more on
You run
Huru
the
in a
bus on
minute.
this.
Let's talk about Oscar Beck, Sam, because I was literally driving down to the morning skate when the Stars released the news about his contract extension. Give us the details.
Yeah, big day for Beck. Gets a 2-year deal, 2-year one way as well. So gets a little bit of a raise up to was $825, and I think that it's well deserved, right? He came in, he was kind of the front runner for that spot we were just talking about, where we mentioned Huru, mentioned Ritskovian, mentioned Blumel, those guys that were battling it out kind of for that 13, maybe 12 forward spot, and now what turned out to be a much more important spot with the injuries that have happened. And Beck's just been solid. That's the only way I like to describe Oscar Beck. He just doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He doesn't feel like a liability at any point in the game. And then when he gets in the offensive zone, that line, whether he's been with Blackwell and Steele or whether he's jumped up with Bork and Stankoven like last game, it just feels like when they're on the ice, their line is pushing the pace and forechecking hard. And I think it's a lot to do with how smart Oscar Beck is, how responsible he is. And he's just always in the right spot, right? And he kind of plays that similar style that I like, where he's not afraid to go to the net. He's a big body, plays a simple, straightforward game, and crashes the net a little bit, gets a little feisty once in a while, which I love. And I think it's just well-deserved, and it's a huge, huge show of fate for him to get a 2-year extension here. And I think it's got to be great for him, right? He goes from being a fringe guy who we're not sure if he's going to start at the NHL level. We're not sure how quickly he might go down. And all of a sudden now he's an NHL player for 2 more years. He's got a 1-year deal, and he's got a lot of confidence that he, not only in himself, but from the coaching staff. So just all around, well-deserved. He's a great guy. One of my favorite guys to talk to in the room. Battled through a broken jaw. He's got braces from it. He takes pucks to the face. He takes hits to the face, and he's just a very good player to have in the room and a good player to have on the ice. So I think a win all around for this organization.
Hey, Sean, as Sam was summing him up, I was trying to think of somebody that I played with that I could compare him to or ask if he was like that. Is he a Dave Reed? I remember Reeder third. Is he something like that?
Yeah, I can see that. No, that's a good one. Now obviously you're going to have a much better recall on Dave Reed than I will, but no, I think that's a pretty good comp, Luds, actually. When you look at them kind of side by side and think about it that way, I really like that side by side there. It's a good one.
The thing that really impresses me about Oscar Beck is he won the job in training camp, and it was a legit open job. Sean, you and I have talked about for many, many years, there's times where the contracts dictate the jobs. Last year was one of those where, you can say all the right things, but we knew who was going to make the team. This year, Oscar Beck, amongst many of the candidates we've seen either called up or maybe on the verge of a call-up, had a shot. Beck won it, partly because of his physical size, his ability to penalty kill. But I thought Pete DeBoer had a fascinating comment today about that, where he said, unlike guys like Maverick Bork, Logan Stankoven, who are offensive players that need to score, Beck's game is not predicated around scoring.
Yeah, it's his game, and I think he's one of the guys. One of the great things about his story is that's how that evolved, right? I remember, so he was drafted in 2018. This is like you talk about the long road to
in Dallas.
In Dallas, right? The long road to Dallas, and it's 2018 now. It's six drafts ago and everything like that. And the time, sometimes we get so judgmental about drafts right away. And so does this now make us look more fondly back at the 2018 draft? That's a whole conversation for another day. But his game, when he came in and he was drafted in the 3rd round, it was more about it was going to be more about his shot. It was more about, oh, he's a shooter, he's going to do that. That's kind of how he profiled a bit as a 17, 18-year-old. And he grew into this more defensive player, this more reliable player. And he's a perfect example. And I'm sure Luds can think of hundreds of guys as I say this right now, who in order to make the NHL, his shot was never going to be the only thing that got him there. And so he found all these other elements to his game, became this well-rounded player, and he earned it in an unconventional way, probably differently than the Stars scouting staff would have thought when they drafted him.
You know, I think the other trait or quality that Beck has is probably, I mean, from a management standpoint, especially from a coach's standpoint, I think he came into this, he knew who he was as a player. There's sometimes you have to get a player to buy into who, coaches and management and other players think you are. Because sometimes you think you're a goal scorer and you're really not. Sometimes you think you're not a goal scorer, but you can be. Bork and some of these other guys. And I think Beck comes in here knowing exactly who he is. And I think from a coaching standpoint, he comes in advertised, and he's not trying to do more.
Yep.
And again, you're always going to try to expand your game.
You know who does that that's younger, or he's younger than, is Lyubushkin. He came in knowing exactly what he was.
Right. And exactly. And I think, be honest with you, I think that's the key to longevity. When you find a role and you kind of wrap your arms around it and you carve out a niche for yourself, just in general, but then on a specific team, and teams are always looking for players like this that they can go plunk them in.
Vern Fiddler.
Fids.
A guy who could be a dynamic junior scorer, reinvented his game at the pro level.
Yeah, and he told me, Trotz really liked him and worked with them. And, I think that he just knew what he needed to do to stick around. That's all you're really trying to do. For all these young guys, you come here and, not that you want to fly under the radar, but you just want to do what you're supposed to do, effective and efficient, and I try to talk to our defensemen. There'll be a time when the next coach will tell you, okay, you need to push up a little bit more. You have some more of this in you. We want you to go, instead of trying to pull a player back. It's easier to push him forward.
Sam, last thing for you before you go to see the warm-up is there was some rumors swirling around the interweb not that long ago that maybe Brady Tkachuk would not see out his current deal with the Ottawa Senators, and everyone's drooling over what he could be, because he's kind of that unicorn, big power forward style, gritty, but also with great scoring potential. He's a guy the Stars would love to have. Most teams would.
I see Brady Tkachuk as the perfect hockey player. I really do. I think that for not only for this team, just in general. I mean, he's at a point per game pace again already this season. 3 consecutive 30-goal seasons. You look at his numbers, it's crazy what he's done when he plays the style of game he does. Obviously, he does get the big minutes as well. He's not just playing the third line gritty role, which is what I think makes him so special, is he plays on their top line. He's on the power play, yet he's still able to bring all of that element to his game. And I just love what he does. I love that the edge he plays with. It's why I love Fischl so much while he was up here. I just think for this team specifically, for the Stars, they're obviously not going to get Brady Tkachuk. If the Senators were to get rid of him, they'd be just admitting that this whole plan they had that was supposed to be taking into effect basically now or last year was a failure, and that's not what they want to do. They're in a playoff spot right now. I don't see him going anywhere, but he can score. He has a great shot. He's a power forward. He gets in your face. He can fight. He has that Tkachuk edge, which I think is unmatched. I mean, growing up in that house is just automatically going to make you into a player like that on and off the ice, whether it's against his own brother or against other players. He's a captain, so he's obviously got the leadership to him. It's just a player to watch every single time he's on the ice, and I'm curious to see what kind of impact he can have. We've talked about the Stars not punishing teams for hitting their best players and getting in their face. He's a guy who's going to do both of those things. He's going to be the guy who goes after Heiskanen in the corners. He's going to be the guy who's in your face after the whistle, standing right in front of Jake Oettinger. It's going to be up to the Stars to not only control him in those areas, but control him on the ice as well, because he can put the puck in the net. So just a player to watch tonight, and a player I love to watch play, honestly.
Well, Sam, good luck with the warm-up. We're all counting on you. We need to know exactly where Arttu Hyry is lining up, because Sean really cares. So make sure he knows what's going on.
I will make sure to send it directly to Sean. See you, boys.
Yeah, see you, Sam. All right. Sean, I want to go back to you real quick about Hyry. Obviously, with Sam not doing his, he's got to go do his thing. So we wanted to get him in and out. But there's some stats that you sent me that I wanted to tee you up on about Huru.
Yeah.
And I do think it goes back to that question about why Huru now versus before Ritzkovian, because he went on a stretch. And I asked Huru this morning, I said, what happened? He's been playing mostly, not to start the year, but mostly this season with Matej Blumel and Cameron Hughes. And Huru said they had a stretch where things just weren't going in, right? They were getting chances, but it wasn't working. And then suddenly I said, did it click? He goes, honestly, they just started going in.
Yeah, and the thing I wanted to pull up on him too was that one of the fun things that I have access to through one of my other places, Elite Prospects, and our partnership with Instat. I'm actually able to pull up some stats from the AHL that we can't find. And as Owen knows very well, AHL stats are very difficult to find that are actually accurate and real. But the one thing about Hoover, you talk about a role and everything like that, and you're talking about a guy in Texas who I think the key part of his game is foundationally disciplined throughout, which is one of the things I talked about with Ritzkovian before, and I think that's a key part. But Huru was averaging 17.23 per game with Texas. About 3.14 of that per game was in the power play, minute 38 shorthanded. Big thing with him, like with his line, and when he was on the ice, the Stars were winning were out shooting opponents 57% of the time, using basically to quick advanced analytics, fancy stat, whatever term you want to use. Basically, roughly 60% of the time that he was on the ice, the Stars were in the other end. He was winning 58% of his faceoffs. And then the big thing, just kind of from his battle, like his battle level and everything like that, is he's winning about half of his puck battles too, and which is what Instat tracks. And now I know some people would like saying a guy winning 50% of his puck battles isn't great, but statistically speaking, it's such a weird stat when it comes to puck battles won and lost. So like if you're skating down the ice and they turn the puck over, sometimes that's a puck battle loss or whatever. So, but Huru in Texas is effectively leading that team in winning puck battles as well. So he is the offensive side there is there, Owen, and what he's doing offensively is big. But to me, it's the whole foundation that leads up into that. And we've seen so many times players that have been these offensive goal scorers, these offensive forces for the Texas Stars. Travis Morin is the most glittering example of it, but Curtis McKenzie, the captain down there before. Guys who have put up numbers for Texas and have come up and haven't been able to play their game and take advantage of their opportunity.
I mean, Matt Frazier's a big one for me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yes, exactly. And so the thing for Huru is you see him on that line likely with Steele and Blackwell, depending on, we'll see what Sam says on how it all shakes out. But he can play in that role, and he can play his smart, aggressive forechecking game. He got power play time in Texas, but he's never going to be a power play guy in the NHL, and that's okay. And this is a guy who has found some more scoring touch in the AHL recently, and I think he's never lost his foundation. That's so big to me.
Luds, well, we say that a guy like Oscar Beck, his game isn't predicated around needing to put up points, but in Pete DeBoer's system, you need to be able to create and generate offense and chances if you're a third or fourth line guy. It can't just be like the old FCC line, which was, Foxa, Como, and Cogliano. It was just about shutting down the opposition. Net, neutral, zero, it doesn't matter. Kill those minutes against the best offensive team, for the line from the other team. In Pete DeBoer's rolling line system, they have to be, even if you're not putting them in the net, which helps, you have to be generating chances. And so, all due respect to Ritzkovian, there wasn't a lot of chance creation even in the limited time. They need, Huru needs to be pushing possession into the offensive zone as part of his line.
This all goes back to, I asked the question to Stam, why wasn't this guy here before? Because exactly as Sean was, describing and talking about all those analytical points and things like that, I'm going, well, I think of it the other way around. Is he knows how to play in his own end. If he's spending a lot of time in the offensive zone, he knows how to make plays on the wall, and he understands the outlet pass. He understands coming back and, the offensive chances and things like that. So, and that's what I was thinking. Well, now we're getting a little bit closer to what we've seen in the past around here, where you just open up the door and let the next group go. So it seems like they're getting back to the identity that they had a year ago. And so, we'll see where he fits in here. But then again, Steele's we've seen what Steele can do. We've seen what Blackwell can do. So I think maybe
is that we're not saying be exactly the same, but is that sort of the prototype or the pathway is be be offensive contributors, but also being so good getting it out of your own end.
When you think about the past and a lot of fourth lines, is you're like, if you can be even at the end of the game and, you go out there and play your 12, 14 minutes or whatever, that's a good game for you guys. Well, now if you can start to chip in at the other end of the rink, that's where you start to separate yourself from, 15, 20, 25 other teams.
Boy, that's a great point, Luds. Sean, that's the thing is, right, it's can you emulate Sam Steele's game to your, within your style? Can you follow Blackwell? Yeah. Blackwell was on the outs trying to get into the lineup at the beginning of the year. Now it seems like him being scratched with the other injuries there is a far cry from reality.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of I think before the season, I talked to one of the things I would always go to is you have to be 14 to 15 forwards deep. Like we talked about the Stars depth, right? And it was one of the big things is why did I see the Stars forwards as one of the deepest groups in the league? It was the first 12, 13 guys, but it was the fact that I looked at how deep this team is all the way to who's going to play tonight. Ritzkovian wasn't even in my thought process. That's just a credit to how good Ritzkovian is in. But like you look at some of the other guys they brought in that are contributing down in Texas, and for me, the Stars built a group of 15 to 16, built an NHL roster forwards 15 to 16 deep. And I would argue the typical NHL team if you had to average it out, probably only goes about 9 to 10 deep on NHL rosters. Like you watch, there's some teams out there, you're like 11 and 12, 13, they're not NHL players. And the Stars effectively decided we were going to build out our roster, build out our depth, where we're going to make sure that we can never get strength on strength. If we had go first line versus first line, second line versus second, third versus third, fourth versus fourth, at the end, eventually at some point, we will have the advantage on third and fourth line. And that's what the Huru signing was part of out of Finland. When the Stars, we've seen this before. It was similar to the Joel Kiviranta signing before, where the Stars leaned into Yuri Letinen's view of, can this guy help us win third and fourth line matchups? And that's the big thing with this. And and the other thing that I think is a good point of this, with this depth, and I think to add to Lud's point, where Lud's is asking, okay, why wasn't Huru up before Ritzkovian? Ritzkovian being back down is a good sign of is a point of, hey, now produce, because if you don't produce, we can give Cole Lind a try. We can see if it's maybe time to try something with Antonio Stranges. I think it sends a good message of, we're looking for guys that are come in. It's not just get your feet wet here. Welcome to the NHL. We want to see you prove you can stay up here.
So, Sean, could you see if Huru does everything that you guys are talking about, could you see him flip-flopping with Beck and moving up with Bork and like a Stankoven, because that would be more of an offensive-minded kind of group?
Stylistically, I guess I could see it. Now, like for me, the Huru we've seen in the AHL is not necessarily the Huru I watch when I watch the footage from Finland and what he did for Finland at the World Championship. So that's one of the reasons I'm really fascinated to watch his game tonight. Hopefully we see a little bit more of that offensive push that we've seen in the AHL. But to me, when they signed him, it was always, hey, this is a reliable defensive first guy in his own end. So I guess stylistically, maybe we could see it, but I think I also need to see, and I think it'll be a great point for us to watch tonight, of which type of player does Huru enter this game as? How does he attack this game? Because he evolved a little bit in the AHL to something positively from the goal scoring perspective, and in the last 10, 15 games that I don't think was there. I wasn't expecting him to be a hat trick guy. In his second to last game with Texas, he had a hat trick up in Manitoba. The next night he had a goal and an assist. He had 5 points over the last 2 games. That was never something I think we really expected from him. And he's just that's even more found. That's kind of an added cherry on top than I think what they originally thought they were getting with him when they signed him.
So here's my question in all this. So let's just, for argument's sake, in a month from now, Tyler Seguin has this miraculous recovery.
Which would be miraculous.
Exactly. Yeah. He's back. And Marchman's going to be back. Okay?
Hopefully sooner than that.
So does that mean, who are you keeping as your 13th forward up here? Now, again, if they all play up to their capabilities, and I'm guessing, does the new contract, make it obvious that Beck is going to be the guy that stays? But I'm just curious, if we played that game, who would it be? Beck or Huru?
Or Blackwell even.
Blackwell's not going down.
I don't
No,
think
oh, you mean getting sent down? Okay, yeah, fair. I thought you were thinking. I was thinking about who could be scratched as the 13th.
Well, I'm just saying who would be. Somebody would have to be that 13th forward.
Well, let's see how Huru plays on the penalty.
Well, I'm
kill.
just saying in the perfect world.
No, but say they both say he comes in and plays.
Yeah,
this,
that's
exactly
an interesting.
Like he comes in and plays this game where everyone says what he's going to do. For me, Huru's the one that goes back down. I'm a bit of a believer, and this is my view on things, and I'm curious of how Jim Nilt goes. For me, the tie in that situation, and kind of I give credit. Beck earned that. I continue to reward that. I want to see that. That doesn't mean Huru's out of the picture or anything like that, but I also don't mind Huru going back to Texas. There's still some more North American there's not a ton to his game that I think needs to be North Americanized or whatever, but he's someone I want to see keep playing and getting more and more North American games under his belt. I go into more of that logic of also who can I keep playing? Because the 13th forward, while they're going to get into some games, I'd like to see Huru play 65 games in North America this year.
Yes, agreed.
Games in North America. Beck has done that. We've seen that in the AHL. We've seen him put in all that time there. So for me, it's Huru who goes back down unless he comes out and does.
Can I ask you guys a really ridiculous, outlandish question about this? Is there any scenario in your minds that the Stars would even consider sending Maverick Bourque to the AHL if Huru was everything he if he comes in and plays exactly what you need?
I'll answer it. That sits in Maverick Bourque's lap. That's up to him.
That's
same with Stankoven, right?
Well,
they're both eligible.
Stankoven, we see that he gives you something different than just points. You know what I mean? There's another element to him. I don't think Stankoven's going back, in my opinion, but I just think Bourque has got to prove that. I think the question that you're asking is, could it be? And I think what it is, it's up to Maverick.
Yeah.
Would Maverick benefit more by going back and lighting it up down there like he did in the past to get confidence back?
Only for confidence in my mind. Because I don't think there's anything more for him to gain at the AHL level. He's accomplished everything he needs to. The only reason I would consider doing it is just you don't want him sitting in the press box.
I think this is this whole conversation. If it ever would come to that point, it's a very good problem to have.
You hope.
I'll say this. For me, the only thing that matters is I don't want Maverick Bourque sitting out games. So if he's not in your 12, if he's not in your 12, he goes down. I have no issue with that. To me, that's the biggest part of the Maverick Bourque plan, and he hasn't really hit in the NHL the way that I may have expected and some other people expected. For me, the long-term development and what he needs to be player-wise, he needs to continue to play games. And so if Maverick Bourque is your 13th forward, and it's not like, we're playing a back-to-back and he's going to be scratched one game, we're going to play the other game. But if he is a legit, hey, he's 13 and he's not going to play for 3 to 4 games, he should be in Texas. He should be playing hockey.
Yeah, I think players like Maverick, and again, I haven't seen him play down there at all, but coming up to this point, the biggest thing for those guys is confidence, right? And you don't get confidence as a goal scorer and a point guy by sitting out. Nope. You get confidence by going someplace and lighting it up.
Okay. So hold on, Sean. We only have 2 minutes left, and I want to talk very briefly about 2 things. One, where Huru's going to play, and then the Ottawa Senators. So according to the lines from Sam, we have the line cards, but they're going to be altered a little bit here as, very close. But flip-flop Steele and Beck. So according to Sam's warm-up lines, Sam Steele will play with Bourque and Stankoven. Oscar Beck will play with Huru and Blackwell. Your thoughts about, I think it's a great idea to have Huru play in the middle. He says he prefers center. He says many guys that play center do. And I think for his first game to make him more comfortable, especially because he's right-handed, then he's not starting on this offside or you have to move Blackwell over. I think that makes a lot of sense.
That's right. Okay. Go ahead, Sean.
I really like Steele and Blackwell together. That's just my one thing is I like when they play together. And I know I'm always the big anti-lines guy or whatever you want to call it. But
is that about getting Steele more minutes? You think moving him up?
I don't. Maybe and maybe that's the case on that. But I really like the 2-man game Steele and Blackwell play with together. And that's to me something why I thought them playing together would be pretty ideal for someone stepping in, because it's not necessarily learning. It's not necessarily Huru learning 2 different guys. It's almost like only learning one player, right? It's like, hey, it's fitting in with this tandem. It's not learning guy A and B. It's like they're kind of merged into one, and it becomes easier to play with. That's why I would have liked them as a trio.
And see, for me, when Steele and Blackwell stay together, to me, I'm trotting them out on the PK for my first pairing.
Yeah.
The way it's going now. They keep
And
them
they probably won't change that. D pairings for the Stars should be the same as last game. You saw the three righties, three lefties. Dumbo pretty solid, which is what you were hoping for in his return from injury. Oettinger will start in goal. He had a great game in Chicago on Sunday. Now, with about minus 10 seconds, let's talk about the Ottawa Senators. Obviously, Tkachuk's their big guy, but the points leader, Luds, is Tim Stützle.
Well, and when you look at his power play, he's got 2 of his goals, 2 of his 12 are on the power play. All the rest are assists. So that kind of going in. He's a playmaker, so as a penalty killer, you need to know that. The other thing is about Stützle, 70% of his zone starts are in the offensive zone. So they feed him. And that's their guy, and he leads the team in points and everything else. But it'll be interesting. You guys were talking about, Brady Tkachuk, and I think he's starting to mature a little bit. When he was young and got that C early, I think he went a little bit over the top as far as getting involved in things that he didn't need to. So it'll be an interesting kind of game to see how he's going to play in this building tonight.
Ottawa's in the midst of a 9-game road trip. They did have the holiday break. They've played. This will be their third of 3 back-to-backs in a row, but spread out over 2 weeks. And, Sean, they have been dealing with goalie issues. Here's the defense and goalies, as Marilainen will get the start tonight, his third start since the injury, first to Forsberg and then to Ullmark. What do you know about the young 22-year-old Finn?
Well, he played 13 games for the Allen Americans last year in the ECHL, so it's not the first time he's played games down in DFW. Obviously, the Allen Americans are I believe they're still the affiliate of Ottawa.
Well, they are of Ottawa. That's the last team. That's the last team that they have.
the last. When you burn through 26 other affiliations, Lutz, there's only so many left.
Yeah, they've gone through a lot of NHL teams.
He's a goalie who last year I thought he looked a bit in his NHL opportunities last year. He looked a bit kind of overwhelmed. I know 2 years ago he got his first 2 starts in the NHL, or 2 appearances in the NHL 2 years ago. Last year came in, played a little bit more regularly, played in all 3 leagues between the ECHL, the AHL, and the NHL last year. I thought he was okay. I thought he was pretty good in his last start for them. He's someone who, if not really for the Ullmark trade, he probably had a little bit more of a thought in future in the organization. I think there's I know I've actually talked to some people in the Goldie front about him with Ottawa, where there's kind of a split view of him in Ottawa of whether he is a legit future number 1 guy or if he's more of just a 1B at best. So they're still trying to learn who he is, I think. And to me, in his NHL starts so far this season, was it 3 or 4? He's been pretty solid. He handles things down low really well, which is pretty common for most goalies. They're also cookie cutter now, but it's as guys go through bigger tests, and he's going through one of those. You start to learn a lot more about a guy from how pressure comes, and this is going to be one of his bigger games so far.
Check out our DLLS merchandise model, Sean, with the wonderful Dallas Skyline t-shirt. Become a diehard. Use the promo code that you get for a free t-shirt. Get that one. It's a great looking shirt.
I have flashbacks of going to the zoo yesterday, looking at his background with the vine and everything in the background. The gorillas and chimpanzee were all swinging around.
I believe he's in his solarium.
Okay, well, it reminds me of the zoo from yesterday with the apes.
I've got this is like I believe in this room I'm sitting in, I think there's around 35 different plants in this room. So it is you're only seeing a little bit of it, but yeah.
Well, thank you both very much. We'll be back for the post-game show, and I encourage you to join us for that post-game show, because not only will we do some serious hockey analysis, but we are going to find out what happened to Sam on I-35 today and ended with a massive issue with his car. All of that coming up here on DLS. Enjoy the game.
We all silly like the mayor.